So the purpose of today's video, for lack of a better term, is primarily just the sake of nostalgia. I'm driving to the town I grew up in. I have not been here in the better part of a decade. More than that, almost 20 years. It's funny because everything looks so different, but you have to remember, I grew up here in the late 90s, early 2000s. And so it's been a very, very long time. And it's one of those things, about nostalgia that's so strange, is how foreign, yet how familiar it is, Like, I remember being a kid in this neighborhood. But when I'm back here in person, it feels alien, Like, there's a Sunoco station right in front of me. And this Sunoco station has been here since I was a little kid. Back in the day, when I was a kid, that was the neighborhood grocery store, and I remember going in there with my mom. They had like a little claw machine in the front, and I used to always beg her for quarters. And then over there's a barber shop that's actually still there. And I remember going there as a kid. And there's the children's loft, which I can't believe is still there, and I'm almost certain I remember that from when I was a boy. As soon as I saw, in relation to my childhood home, the gas station and the barbershop and all of those things, I immediately knew where each and every little tiny thing was. And I remembered that from where the barbershop is, that my elementary school is this way. So that's where we're going now. And this right here was my elementary school. It's gone now. It was closed a couple years back. They used to let us out at the end of the day, right up there. That was the main entrance, the office and everything, and the library and the gym. There's something to be said about seeing your childhood elementary school boarded up. It's kind of strange, when you actually think about it, because maybe erroneously I always think of elementary school as like the pinnacle of your childhood experience, and an era of being carefree and not having to worry about much of anything. And so to look back on it and to see it boarded up with construction barricades all around it, it's almost, for lack of a better term, representative, or of the idea of getting older. It's maybe I'm reading too much into it, but it's fascinating and horrifying. Having just driven to my childhood home and realizing and having this like great yearning within me to just park my car and to just run up to the front porch and to run inside and see my parents and everything. And then you logically think about it, and you're like, oh, this is someone else's house. This is someone else's experiences, not yours anymore. So right now I am driving to the mall, my childhood mall. Aside from the fact that it's missing some anchors, it's surprisingly crowded for being a Monday at 1:50 in the afternoon. My main memories here as a child were not really the anchor stores. I wasn't shopping at Dillard's or Macy's or Sears when I was a child, but there was a puzzle store here. And I loved that store for some reason. My mom and I used to put puzzles together all the time when I was a kid, and so that's where I got a lot of my puzzles. Here's the food court I'm going to enter in. When I was a kid, I used to get a lot of ice cream here. My father would eat all of it. He'd get me like a sundae and he'd give me one bite and he'd eat all of it. There used to be a Jillian's. I don't know if anybody remembers Jillian's, but there used to be a Jillian's here. And Jillian's was the place where I played my very first video game. Which, I know this isn't really a video game related channel, but I love video games to this day. And the first game I ever played was the House of the Dead, you know, the Sega arcade game. And that started an entire lifetime of love for Sega. So yeah, why don't we go inside? Tear my ACL just for the video. So, not to dox myself or anything, but I grew up in a town that was unfortunately beset by economic difficulties as a consequence of the steel mills collapsing. A lot of poverty, a lot of crime. I was fortunate enough that it was not something that I had to deal with from a personal perspective or a personal understanding. It's exactly the same. You're probably wondering why I decided to make a stop at a chain restaurant to essentially cap off everything before I make my final stop. And the fact of the matter is that the reason why I'm stopping at a mediocre chain restaurant is solely for the purpose of the fact that this is the last place my family ate at before we moved away. And it was a place that I frequently ate at because if any of you out there have children, you know how notoriously difficult it is to get them to eat anything that's of any semblance of decent food. So we ate here quite frequently. And so I drove up here and I get inside and they tell me that they're not accepting cash. So I had to drive to get cash, and it took me like 20 minutes. Traffic is absolutely horrific here, much to my surprise. And so, I guess, if we're going to have our very special episode moment, the lesson of today's video, really, in a lot of cases, in a lot of ways, I should say, you know, nostalgia is one of those things that you long for it, and you hope for it, and you search for it, and it occupies a very special part of who you are inside of your heart. And then when you kind of reach that nostalgia, at least in my case, it's very much a feeling of, oh, okay, and that's about it. Well, let's go have some chocolate chip pancakes and a glass of chocolate milk and order some eggs and only eat half of them. Alright, well, there's a distinct reason why I decided to end the video here. This used to be a Toys R Us. Now it's a Harbor Freight. It has also been divided into one of those, like, bargain bin store things. Now that party place that's there, I think it's possible that was there, and that this was just the Toys R Us. I don't remember, but I know the Toys R Us was right here. So I thought it was fitting to end the video with the fact that the last Toys R Us kid has grown up.